Hey everybody, this week a Spalted Maple floor lamp with a darkroom enlarger lamp. Stick around.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Family Woodworker channel. Hey, this week we're going to do a project made out of something called Spalted Maple. Did you say salted caramel? Yes, actually it's going to be called Spalted Maple, not salted caramel. In any case, what that means is that there's a black fungus that tends to enter certain varieties of wood, and it winds up killing the tree. In this particular case, it's hard maple. And if you look real close, you can see different colorations and black lines in the wood, and ultimately it gets into the grain and it winds up killing the tree. It's also relatively rare and hard to find, so when you go to buy this stuff, it's kind of pricey. 4 decent sized pieces in order to make my floor lamp cost about $120 just the materials. It's going to be a pretty exciting project. Pretty rare and pretty exciting. About as rare as Steve Eiserman coming back to Detroit. Well, maybe not that rare, but pretty rare and pretty cool. So stick around for this week's project.
Hey, we're all pretty happy that Captain Steve came back to Detroit and joined the front office. I had to add that to this video. So this design, I'm going to have a weighted maple base. I'm going to use spalted maple for the riser, the stand. I'm going to add a couple cross supports. And I'm going to use a curved swing arm with a darkroom enlarger head for the overall design. And then an accent hardwood knob to tighten it all down.
So in addition to the beauty of this spalted maple wood, I was kicking around a bunch of different ideas on what I wanted the head of the floor lamp to look like. And I like the idea of combining sort of the color of the spalted maple with maybe something industrial. But I didn't really have any idea what I wanted to do there, so I went back to my past a little bit, and I'm talking way back. I used to be a college newspaper photographer, and in addition to doing a bunch of work in the darkroom there, I also had my own darkroom at home. And I bought a lot of my equipment used. It didn't cost a lot of money, but this is a big, heavy enlarger head that you would use to print paper from negatives. And it's got a lot of bulk to it. I can't use it the way it sits. I'm going to have to see what I can take off of it, but the goal is to use this guy to be a lamp here below the bellows. So you don't have to be an expert here, but you'll see what I mean as we start to take this thing apart. I'm hoping this will work, so stick with us, and otherwise we'll come up with some other ideas to give this that industrial look.
So the first thing I needed to do is take off some of this heavy armature, which is actually steel. It's pretty heavy. And it controls the enlarger head as it moves up and down to control your focus. But in any case, all I really wanted to keep was this aluminum box and this front, which has some cool design to it. So I took off the heavy armature and it gave me a pretty lightweight box to work with, and that's really all I needed. So these are the 4 pieces of the spalted maple that we talked about. Again, it cost about $115, $120 for these 4 pieces. The very long piece to the left there is going to be my riser, and the piece that I'm working on right now are going to be for the 2 cross supports that sit on the riser. And they're going to be tapered. They won't just be a straight, square rectangle that attaches to the riser. I've got them tapered and I've got a rounded top to each of those, and you'll see that as it comes together. And one of the other things that I need to do is to think about the base and how to make it both match the spalted maple of the riser and the lamp, but also to be heavy enough to sit on the floor without the lamp tipping over. So my top layer is going to be just regular hard maple. I didn't have any more spalted maple to work with, but the hard maple will blend in pretty well as you attach the riser to it. But it's not going to be heavy enough all by itself, so while I glue this thing up to be the top of the base, I also had this 1.5" oak available, which was pretty heavy. So with an 1.5" oak maybe sitting on the bottom and that maple layer sitting on top, the plan is for this to weigh enough so that the lamp won't tip over. Of course, that's the plan. If it doesn't work out, it's thick enough material where I could gouge that out and I could add some weight to it and solve that problem. The other thing I wanted to do is have the oak bottom of this lamp stick out a little further than the width of the maple on top. And so I added a couple of pieces of 3/4 inch oak to these big pieces. These are just 6-inch lumber, so 5.5 inch total, and I wanted them a little bit bigger, so those 3/4 inch pieces that I added gave me a little extra width. And you're going to need, in order to cut a relatively perfect circle, you need some sort of a jig to, and all it is a flat piece of wood with that allows you to drill in a screw so that you can pivot that whole piece, and that cuts a pretty clean circle. I didn't have the video for the same process I used on the maple, but those two pieces were cut out and the maple piece was a little bit smaller than the oak. Now here I'm gouging out a side of my riser for this lamp, and that's where the cord is going to go. And I thought about using a router to kind of gouge that out, and I tried that and I broke a router bit without even moving that hard or that fast. It was a cheap bit, I shouldn't have tried it. So the table saw helped me gouge that out. And I'll show you how the cord fits in there a little bit later in the video. Now for my two support pieces, I needed to cut a clean edge on here, and then I also needed to cut that taper. And I didn't really want to screw my straight edge rip template into that wood, so I found that that double-faced tape gave me enough stick so that I could glue my rip template to the wood and then run it through. That gives me a clean edge for the glue up, and that worked out really well. And now one of the things I do when I try to pick on a design like this is I don't try to work off of a hard and fast plan. I didn't really take a lot of measurements. A lot of this is just by look and feel. I wanted it to have the right look to it. I wanted to think about how that arc would look on the lamp and kind of what that angle needed to be. And while I was drawing it by hand, that seemed to look pretty nice, and it turns out it's about 15 degrees. So this will be the overall front angle of those swing arms at 15 degrees, and then the darkroom enlarger box will sort of attach to the front of that 15-degree taper. So just going to chop that off and give me two pieces for those swing arms to work with. And there's two of those because they're going to go on both sides.
Ooh, spalty. Dude, it's not a word.
So here's the swing arm, and basically I'm going to add a curved end to this, not the end that attaches to the lamp, but the part that attaches to the riser. And hey, you know, when you need a curve, you look around the shop and you find something that fits. And also I want the swing arm to have a gradual arc to it. I didn't want it to be just a rectangular piece of wood. So I'm using an old trick, and I've done this in other videos, where I'm using a very long strap attached to an opposite end or my opposite bench, and that allows me to draw a very gradual arc here, as if this were a big compass. So now that I've got all my curves mapped out on my pieces, I went back to the bandsaw to cut them all out. This is the top of one of those risers. This is the swing arm. It's got that very gradual arc to it. And there's going to be two of these pieces. And no matter how good you try to get on the bandsaw, your cut is never perfect. So that's why we've got this oscillating spindle sander. It helps a great deal with inside curved pieces. In fact, I did a video on this around Christmas time. I did a review on those and purchased this sander, and it worked out well. So I also need a way to tighten the knobs down on my swing arms on the riser. So I just went to the computer and designed a couple of these knobs, and I'm going to use Wenge because it's a nice accent color. In fact, the black color of that wood sort of matches the black spalting really well. So we're just going to spray glue the back of that, put those pieces on the Wenge, and we'll cut those out on the bandsaw. And if you go slow, your cuts came out pretty well. We'll just clean up the edges and we're good to go. Now here's the cord hidden on the inside of that riser. And I'm just going to glue the piece that I cut off to the top of that. And what I don't show here, there's a missing video of drilling a hole through from that channel to the opposite side of that riser so the cord can kind of squirt out and lead to the swing arm. Now, I didn't want my tightening knobs to be flush up against the wood. I wanted some sort of a washer, so I found some babinga, just a little 1/4 inch babinga, and I'm sorry, this is 1/8 inch babinga, and that'll act as a washer and provide some space. So now for my 2 risers, I didn't really want to just glue them, or these are the 2 support pieces to the riser. I didn't want to just glue them to the riser. So I'm going to put in some dowels, and this doweling jig helps you center punch those holes. And so I'll have this on both sides of that riser. And you can just see the cord at the bottom of the shot there kind of squirting out that little channel that we cut. And so we'll fill our little holes. Add a little bit of glue. I don't want any squeeze out here. And there you have it. And there's one side. And at the very top of this, you can't see it, but the curved end of the support piece flushes up against the riser. So there's the cord squirting out of that little hole that I drilled through, and I had a very long drill bit that I had to keep flat in order to get me to the channel on the other side where the cord was. So I was pretty careful throughout this project. Once I got the cord in there, I didn't want to pull it out, but it does move freely, so I'm able to kind of pull a little bit more out if I need more. Now here are the 2 swing arms, and I need to provide that gap between those 2 swing arms so that they can fit on the actual riser. And so I'm just going to glue in a couple pieces of maple here to give me that dimension. And the enlarger head will fit right on top of that, and I'll have to screw that into the back. I also need a hole here so that I can get the cord from my riser across the swing arm and then into the light fixture. So this is just being centered up here. I'm going to wind up drilling a bigger hole for the cord, and then just a couple of small holes for screws to hold that box on there. So not very high-tech, not very complex. And this is how those pieces will come together. So here's the top of that riser. And then how the swing arm, and again, I wanted some curved looks to this particular design, and here's how those 2 pieces will come together. So again, I didn't have specific measurements here. I'm just looking for the way that it looked good as it was being attached to the riser, and then I'll go ahead and find the center hole to punch all the way through both the swing arms and the riser. And to make sure that I had a straight hole up and down, the drill press comes in handy here. So now I'm looking to attach the base to that riser, and I need a hole basically for the cord to kind of come through the bottom of my riser and then also come through that first layer of that maple base. And then I need a way for that cord to kind of squirt out to the side so I can plug it into the wall. And so I just set my little circular saw with a pretty shallow depth here, and I just cut out a little channel, and that cord will fit right in there. And so now with this maple base attached to the riser, the cord comes out to the side, and then we put the oak heavy base on top of that, and we'll get it all centered. Now these 2 pieces I wound up keeping as screwed in elements to the lamp, so if I ever needed to take it off or add some weight or do any kind of other maintenance, possibly to the cord, I can take those pieces off and go from there. And there's the cord. And so now I'm just screwing the head to this enlarger to my swing arm. And then I've got the lamp piece, but that's how it's going to look when it's all set. So in order to tighten that swing arm, I needed these knobs, and I'm using just a T-nut that I'll glue in place here, and I've got a threaded metal rod that's going to go through all three pieces of that wood. So the riser and the two sections of the swing arm will fit together, and then I've got that threaded rod will go through all of those layers, and then with my T-nut into my tightening knob, this is how we're going to do the assembly. Now in between here, and I don't usually show video of doing the finishing, but this was done with spray lacquer. It's got a nice semi-gloss finish to it. And then there's the Babinga washer, and then the Wenge knobs go on both sides, and that actually gives me quite a good grip on that swing arm, and that's going to be enough pressure to hold everything up. And I really like the gradual arc of the swing arm too. Again, I didn't want it to look squared off. And so I was really pleased how this whole project was coming together. So now this is the final assembly to that box.
So here's the basic box construction, and this is the front to that enlarger head. It's pretty big, but it kind of tells the story from the old days in the college newspaper and a lot of the darkroom work I used to do. We'll put this on last. The switch will actually be installed in the top, and then we'll put the fixture on the inside.
And so now this is just a lamp fixture you can get at the hardware store, and it's the same kind of fixture you would see in the top of a desk lamp with a twist knob that turns it on and off. Pretty simple. And that hole was already there from the cord that was used for the enlarger, so I didn't have to drill any hole in the top. So just attaching the wire to that fixture, and then there's just a wide brass tightening ring over the top of that, and that's nice and tight in there, and there's plenty of room for the light bulb to fit in there. And this is how it looks. It was a really fun project. The light that comes out of it is actually great, and because of the adjusting knobs there, you can sort of adjust the direction of the lamp and where the light goes. So it sits on the floor pretty nice on the carpet. I may add a little bit more weight here, but look at the spalting. The colors are just fantastic on this kind of wood. Not something you'd normally see, even in any kind of a standard piece of furniture. It's really relatively rare. It's hard to find this stuff. You've got to go to a specialty wood store in order to get this type of wood, but it looks fantastic. So the wrap up, about $175 in total materials, about 24 hours part-time across a couple weeks to build. It included spalted maple, babinga, wenge, and oak to give you all the accent pieces. And I really encourage you to give this project a try using anything you like. In fact, come up with something else industrial for the lamp head, and it'll be a great project. Hey, thanks for joining us. Please like and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you soon.